Thank you all for joining us late afternoon. Hopefully you've all had lunch and a cup of coffee as well. And I don't think there's a doubt we will keep you awake and hopefully on the edge of your seats as well. So this is, like Emilie mentioned earlier, this is a panel on security and specifically on auditors and protocols. We'll talk a bit more about that. But first, we'll start with a round of intros, and I'll get started myself. So I'm Rajeev. I am the founder and organizer at Securium, which is an online community of really, anyone who's interested in Ethereum security. We focus only on education and evaluation. It's a huge community. It's all online, and it started as, we're known for running boot camps, security boot camps. Started with a grant from the Ethereum Foundation last year around this time. And then since then, we've been collaborating with some of the top projects in the space, such as Certora, Trail of Bits, Diligence, Sherlock, Spearbit, and many others. So take a look, Google for the Discord and take a look. So that's me and Securium. But off to the others. So we have strategically, there are two sites. So we have the auditors on the right because, auditors are always right, no matter what others think. Yeah. I'm a security guy myself, so I don't want to take sides. So hopefully this is right at the center. But we do have the protocols to my left. And why don't we start with the introductions? Kurt?
Yeah, hi. So I'm Kurt Berry. I'm part of the Protocol Engineering Core Unit at MakerDAO. I focus there on safety and security, so formal verification, internal code review, best practices. I have to confess I'm a little bit of a double agent because I also do sometimes security audits on the side, either independently or sometimes with Spearbit DAO. But I'm representing the protocol side of things today.
I'm Christopher. I work for Polygon. I've been there for the last 6 months, and I'm basically a security manager leading a lot of our application security strategy. Before that, I've been for more than 10 years doing Web 2 stuff, also on the security realm. And obviously, during the night, a very avid farmer.
Hi, everyone. I'm Merlin from Morpho, the peer-to-peer lending protocol. So basically, I'm writing smart contract code, managing the Solidity team, and finishing CS 2 days too. So let's go for the right side.
Yeah, you hear me? Okay. Hi, I'm Nuri Tedor. I'm from Certora. My background is computer science and a lot of years in security. In Certora, I'm VP product. We are building a technology for formal verification. And we are also, I guess, kind of auditing code because we are doing formal verification for a lot of our customers. And yeah, that's it.
Okay, my name is Hossam from Halburn. I've been doing cybersecurity for quite a while, actually. Joined Halburn for focusing on both of Web3 and Web2 kind of stuff. Spent some time around security research and blockchain space. And yeah, doing regular smart contracts audits.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm Emilie, head of sales of Chain Security. We do smart contract audits with some of the protocols who might be on the stage now, and some other that you've seen today and that you'll see tomorrow. And so I'm the only non-technical person on this stage, I think, so the only muggle of the of the panel. But yeah, I think I can bring more on the perspective of talking to the projects and kind of the project management side. So yeah, hopefully I can bring that.
No, I mean I think that's hopefully it'll be a big part of the session because most of the technical sessions end up being very technical and focus on technicalities, be it formal verification, be it, the protocol size, the complexity and things like that. But the focus of this panel was to really focus on the relationship aspect, right? So the cultural aspect as well, not purely technical. And there are so many things that are sort of discussed and shared in private on Twitter and shared in private and Twitter, but we want to bring those out as well. So I think that'll be hopefully something that we'll all take away from this panel. But before we dive in, right? I always like to level set, because audits as a term means something very different to different people, right? Be it from the Web 2 space or even within the Web 3 space, people have a very different notion of what an audit is, right? So maybe we can all just share what does an audit mean to Kurt, to others, right? And I'll start off, right? Usually the definition that you see is, audit is, well, the technical part is that it is an external security assessment, right? And there is a school that hates the word audit, but I think that ship has sailed. We are stuck with that term, and we can try to change it. But some people prefer assessment, which is okay. But it is an external security assessment. And external becomes important because you have a protocol side that is doing all the testing, and then they want a third, a second pair of eyes, or a third party to look at the code and the design, right? So that is typically what an audit is, at least to me. And it's also, the other thing that you'll see is it's a time boxed effort, right? It's not like, Emilie, please audit us, and then 1 year later, keep auditing and keep telling us, right? It's like 2 weeks, 2 months. So there is something that's fixed that determines the effort that goes in, that determines the price, that determines many other, and the outcome as well. So that's what an audit means to me. But I would like everyone else to add to it, challenge it.
Yeah, well, coming a little bit from the Web 2 world, I always discuss with auditors in the Web 3 world, like, what exactly are you going to do? I think it's important to figure out what is your goal. Is this a code review? Are you going to read line by line and just figure out there's no typos? Are you going to do a penetration testing, meaning are you going to attack it with everything you can to figure out if there's a way to exploit it? Or are you actually going to review it against the standard? This is how in the traditional Web 2 cloud, pen testing type of things are defined. And at the same time, you also have these definitions around, gray box, white box, black box, penetration testing. And I think a lot of this is very important when you talk with an auditor, when you deal with an auditor, is setting these parameters and setting the goal for the audit, so that you understand exactly what you're getting. As you said very well, this is only going to be for 2 weeks or for 3 weeks. I'm going to focus on these areas. It's not a proof to tell you you are absolutely 100% secure. And I think that's a very important distinction that needs to be more, this community needs to be more comfortable discussing and making it clear.
Yeah, so I agree strongly that, the scope of what an audit can encompass can, be a very broad range of techniques, and, what level of abstraction you're looking at. The concept I like to emphasize is that really the property I want actually to ensure is safety, not security, because security means that, no hacker can break your code. But smart contracts can also just be unsafe, right? Like if you send some funds and they get locked, or they get locked up for longer than you expect, right? The users lost money. It doesn't matter that there was no hacker. And so I think the focus is, for me, slightly broader than just security. It's this superset of safety.
Yeah, going back to safety and security, I think that I'm not from the Web 2 side, so I mostly come from Web 3. And I would say that we should not focus on typo and like code style, etc., but more on how that the contract works as expected. Can you, as you said, can we lock users fund, etc., or even can we hack that contract? And I think auditors should just focus on that, and the protocol, or at least protocols developers should work on with integration tests, etc., just to make a code that is safe, works well, etc. And just to remove part of the annoying work that auditors could do.
Okay, so for me, audit is something that is time limited, and it's something that is more manual, and it's one of the techniques in order to increase security. So the formal verification is another technique. We can view it as an audit because part of the formal verification is a manual work, understanding the system, learning the system, and writing the specification for the system. That's the manual work. But the ongoing that you can use your formal specification in your CI integration for changes, that part is not an audit. So audit is something more manual and time limited, and it's only one technique to increase security.
So audits, from my own perspective, actually what all of the guys are currently mentioned, they talked about it should ensure the safety of the contract, the smart contract, but this more to be like quality assurance job. It's not the security auditor job, but some security companies are doing it. But yeah, of course, they have to check that should be part of the security audit in the Web3 space. And the other thing is it's like the audit itself is not cannot be categorized in any kind of black box or gray box or white box Web3 type of stuff, because you're somehow trying to find the security issues. You're trying to make sure that the contract is safe, but you're not really trying to optimize the gas inside the contract, which I saw a lot of auditors doing it. As a personal opinion, I don't think reporting gas optimization is really useful in terms of the safety side or security side as well, side of things. And I will add also something related to CI/CD. Yeah, we are taking here the Web3 to Web2 security, actually, because think about you have your GitHub account or your GitHub organization account, or somehow you got compromised, someone could modify the code, or your front-end supply chain attacks, and we have a lot of actually complex stuff could go on, and this could make the Web3 community suffer a lot of hacks and stuff, in my opinion.
Yeah, so to me, more, again, on the kind of contractual side, not the smart contract, but the actual contract, the legal contract, is, like a time-bound effort, like you said, of a certain methodology that is going to be applied, and that we think in this time period, it's going to be enough to cover a certain scope. And the product is that to say, okay, we've applied this methodology, which to the best of our knowledge is, our best effort to secure the contract. We're going to apply this for this period of time. And some methodologies might be better than others. And that's also why I think, Chris, what you were saying is a bit trickier to say exactly what you're going to do, because it's kind of something that is constantly evolving and is also, different from one code base to the other sometimes. But it's really professionals that have this know-how, that apply this methodology that is constantly improved. And I think that's really what we're selling. And yeah, now I think another big question is, you were talking about the safety, the security, kind of where does the liability of the auditor lie after having applied this methodology? That is another question.
Yes, we'll get to that. I mean, that's one of the spicier ones we'll get to. But I think just to summarize, right, of all the things that we've heard, so it's not like we all agree on what an audit is, right? Like Nurit was suggesting that maybe some people perceive audits to be the manual kind, and formal verification might be something outside of it to complement it. But some people perceive as, hey, it's yet another methodology that falls under the umbrella of audits, right? And then Kurt brought up this topic of how it's not just security where you have malicious intent and attacks, but it's reliability, safety of the contract itself, right? So I think there are the various views, right, of what audits are, which makes it tricky. But a part of this panel is also to involve the audience. So hopefully all of you are here, which I can assume that you're all interested in security, or you use security, or you implement security. So having heard this, just want to take a quick poll from the room. Based on what you've heard, how many of you think audits are a waste of time and money for your protocols, for your projects?
Oh, what, for them? Oh, sorry.
So everyone here thinks audits are good and that you're willing to pay the auditors. Okay, yes?
Please repeat it so it stays in the recording. Oh, okay. I think it's a bit of a grey area that the quality of the audits is both on like you really lean on the reputation of the auditors, and also you've got to analyse what the processes that they're following in the audit. However, this stuff isn't standardised, nor there's not like a publicly available industry standard. So it's really difficult as protocol developers to try and sift through the mud to find a suitable auditor or know whether or not we're getting value for money when reaching out to an auditor.
Yeah, great point. Yeah.
Yeah, if I may answer, yeah, that's really, really difficult for a protocol to know, right? I mean, you can look at the rec leaderboard and see who's on there, who's not, but it doesn't also tell you, you know, maybe an auditor has been doing, I don't know, 1,000 audits and there's one on the rec leaderboard and another auditor has done 2 and then, okay, there's none on the rec leaderboard. So that's also, you don't have the metrics, right? And that's kind of difficult, yeah.
Yeah, I think, sorry.
Yeah, one more. Yeah, please.
Yeah, maybe another perspective that some people have, not necessarily that I defend the same view, but I think it's that auditing so far, it's almost like a stamp that you need to have. And as you guys mentioned, I'm not very proficient in auditing, but there are many ways, and I guess you from Halborn, forgive me, forgot your name, but you mentioned that like maybe some focuses are off as well. And so that gives me the impression that, okay, auditing is just like because you also have internal testing, obviously, you need maybe a second, third pair of eyes, but the credibility of the project ultimately comes from the experience of the user, and not necessarily comes from the quality of an auditing or from something that you, I guess, extract or hire or whatever from the outside. So I think auditing maybe for some people also has this idea or this tag of being a stamp that a project needs to have so that it has credibility. But as I said, I think credibility ultimately comes just from the experience itself, from the user.
It's just an expensive stamp.
And I think it's also a very good, it's just one of the many stamps that you should have. Now, when people do due diligence, and I see this with like VCs and funds, they just want to, they're like, should we invest in this project? Or normal user, should I put my funds? And the only thing they normally look is like, oh, do they have an audit? Like the audit is one of the latest things that you do throughout the security lifecycle as a product. And I think you mentioned this a little bit, Hassan, this is just one of the things. You need to look at everything that has been done from the beginning, from threat modeling all the way to the end, to an audit, to a pen test, to monitoring and everything else. So, yeah,
Yes. So I'm also just kind of curious about, just kind of building trust between users, right, and let's say the actual applications, et cetera, that they're interacting with. And so, let's say like from the user perspective, how can you, like, for example, like be more confident that the service that you're using is accurate. Okay. Yeah, so I guess like as like a user, for example, if you're going to be, let's say, interacting, with a DApp, what can you do to be, confident that this is something trustworthy, right? So, perhaps there was, an audit that was done, and I guess like anyone can kind of put, let's say, a Certora stamp on their website, but probably you want to go a little bit deeper than that. And so how do you kind of think about, just that?
I think so. We'll table that question, right? I think we're hitting all the points about quality, about who is that audit meant for? Is it meant for the end user or is it meant for the project, right? So we are going to hit all those. Just want to make sure to get a sense of what the room is, right? So we will touch upon all that, but let's sort of jump ahead to the second, important focus of this panel, which is about relationship and partnership, right? And what is it? Does there need to be a partnership? Is it a partnership? Is it a transactional relationship? Is it a long-term thing? Does it matter to have the context? And there's so many things we can dive into, but maybe Emilie, you've been interacting with so many of these protocols. So what do you think of?
Yeah. I mean, to us, we really see this as a partnership. So, I mean, first of all, I think for a lot of auditors, they have only limited capacity and there's really a lot of demand. So there's, first of all, kind of a client selection process. So sometimes it feels almost like being a VC, where you choose kind of, because it's going to be your brand as well. Who you audit is going to be your brand as an auditor. So yeah, we do this selection, and even as you schedule your audit quite a long time in advance, so there is this whole management of, okay, what documentation do we need? How are we going to collaborate? So even before the audit starts, the partnership starts already. And then afterwards, when it's time to fix, when it's time to deploy, we always try to stay there for the client. And even if the audit is not ongoing, we try to be available. And this is, I think, something everybody should strive for. So yeah, partnership for sure.
Yeah, I totally agree. We also believe in partnership. We believe that the relationship should start as early as possible during the deployment, development, and of course, all the way. And if unfortunately there is also bug detection after deployment, we help our customers understand, think together, and try to understand what went wrong, what can be improved. We also see that working with the same customers over years helps them and helps also us, because we are already familiar and they are also familiar with our processes, and sometimes it's just an adaptation of the specification, which is also easier to work with if you already have. So
it's much more than a stamp, right? I mean, so it's more like a movie that sort of keeps going. Hopefully not a horror, not a comedy, and less drama, right? Sorry? Exactly. So it's exactly. So more like, it's a thing that has many episodes and keeps going with V1, V2, and it's a partnership. What is the protocol side? How do you see it?
Yeah, I think it's kind of partnership relationship on the protocol side too. But you don't want to be also married, at least on Morpho, to our auditors. Why? Because as you said, one of you folks said that you don't really know the reputation, how the different audit companies work, etc., etc. And so at Morpho, we are exploring like different audit companies just to assess the level, also just to check how they work and what fits the best for us. Also changing auditors, it's like having new, fresh new eyes that just review, audit your protocol, and that it's super important to not have like just one or two auditors looking at your code. So even though you want to keep some really good auditors that you already worked with, I think it's super important to also explore what's happening outside and how the other companies work.
Interesting.
Maybe I can comment on, I think it's very important to have a good relationship. I agree 100%. You need to have variety, especially if you're launching new products and everything else. Don't always go to the same one, because just like everything in life, they're going to get used to it. They're going to get lazy. This is fine. I already reviewed it, 3 months ago. But at the same time, I think it's very important. Your auditors are not only your auditors. They are also for small projects. No, they are part of your security team. They are an extension of your security team. If you get a bug bounty in Immunify, if you have responsible disclosure, you can trust them. And I put them on the spot, especially if they've done an audit for us. Like, hey, I just got this through the bug bounty. My team seems to feel this is quite valid. Can you also have a look? No, and hopefully they won't charge me for it. And then also have a look and confirm this. No, and help me provide recommendations and everything else. So I think it's a good relationship to have, and you shouldn't be married with one person, as somebody already said here or here. You can be definitely a polygamy.
Yeah, I don't know if I have a ton to add. I kind of agree with everything that's already been said. I mean, and full disclosure, so MakerDAO has actually an audit retainer with Chain Security. And that's been a very valuable partnership, in particular having like scheduled time each month, because sometimes like there's a lot of lead time on audits if you're contacting a new auditor, and if you're shipping code regularly, there can be a lot of value in having guaranteed time from people who are familiar with your protocol and know it well. Of course, as was mentioned, sometimes you want the fresh eyes, right? Because maybe like your auditor starts developing the same blind spots you have, because they're always looking at the same thing, and it is a lot of cost to like do multiple audits for everything, although it can be very interesting to see like which bugs overlap and which don't. And I think the way you make that decision is like the newness and criticality of the contract. So if it's something that's going to have, a lot of funds in it, or if it's like some very new thing you're adding to your protocol, then that's a stronger case for let's spend extra money, get more audits. But if it's a fairly small change that you think your established auditor is going to have covered, maybe you don't need to spend as much. So that's maybe how you balance the resources.
About a relationship and partnership, or I totally agree with Chris. Like, for example, he mentioned that they might get like a bug bounty report. And something like, okay, guys, can you check that, please? We got this report, and we think it's valid. We think it's a serious issue. But if you are doing a regular audit with a regular company, maybe they will charge you with that, or you have to like subscribe to their service, like as a retainer service or whatever. But we have like a model, what's called like security as service. We're becoming like your internal security team, and we are having actually, which is really part. Maybe we can talk about later on, which is the communication between. How we are managing the communication between the protocol and the auditors or the security provider. I would like to call not just an auditor, because in my opinion, if you went to audit your contract or your aim is security, so you should look for a cybersecurity company who's doing audits, because it's not just Solidity code you will need to look at. It's a really big wide of attack surf, as I mentioned before. So yeah, establishing this type of communication channel, like for example, if the client's using Slack, we are also using Slack, we are getting into a channel and we start communicating with them on daily basis, weekly basis. Like, what are you guys working on? Okay, we are updating them. Like, we are feel like, okay, we are on in your house security team. So that's why they are feeling free to send us like, okay, we got this phishing email, for example. Can you investigate is there someone trying to do something wrong? Or whatever. So yeah, I think communication is also important in terms of managing the relationship or partnership between the auditors and protocols.
And so this is a good segue to the next topic, right? I mean, it's good. I mean, relationship, partnership, I guess, has pros and cons, right? Pros are there's a lot of context. Then I don't know if it's a pro or a con, but there could be a scope creep, as in you agreed to something, but then there's a bug bounty, and Chris sends you a message on Slack saying, "Hey, can you take a look?" Right? I mean, and now let's say your auditors are on a different project. I mean, I don't know exactly how the retainer works, but I doubt that there is one engineer. Well, maybe there's one engineer for Maker in this case, right? Assigned. Something like that.
Yeah, so in our case, if there is this work? Yeah, in our case, if there is something urgent coming up, so what we do is simply kind of postpone a bit the audit that's happening now, and we would put it on the weekend, and then to take 2 days to review the urgent issue. And so that's why in our contract we always have kind of this 1 week buffer, which normally we don't use. But then if there's something urgent, we want to be able to push something to the weekend to work on the urgent thing. And we try to, if we get the you up call, to do it in the night. Maybe we're not up, maybe our phone is on silent, but we really try to do it first thing, because sometimes millions can be at stake, right? And like you said, when we discover live vulnerabilities in the code, maybe we're auditing something that's a bit similar, we find a vulnerability, then, even if we haven't audited it, even if it wasn't in our scope, I think we have just this duty in general to try to make the ecosystem safer. So, yeah.
So what are the bounds of that, right? I mean, I think this is good, but where I'm getting to is, let's say I'm just putting Maker on the spot, right? you're doing what you have a retainer, so you're doing something with Maker, right? And you have this thing assigned, and then you get a ping from Chris, right, saying, let's assume that Polygon is also working with chain security, right? You get a ping and say, right? So, well, I don't know after this panel what's going to happen, but hopefully the partnerships will stay on. But you get a ping, right, saying, hey, you know what? Okay, can you take a look, right? But ultimately, there is finite bandwidth, right, for your engineers, for ourselves, and how do you figure out that scope? I mean, does it all boil down to the terms of your contract? Because I mean, this is obviously we're talking about a partnership and a relationship, which is much more than that, right? So how I guess in this case it's hard for the auditors, right? Where do you draw the line? And I mean, same thing with Certora, right? Because in this case, you've written, I mean, it's not a simple fix, right? You've written all the specs and now you have to go and you have to check, and maybe the context was from 6 months ago, right? So how do you deal with it?
I mean, yeah, you asked me, so I'm gonna answer. But
Please.
if you guys have yeah, so this kind of emergency time that we have, it's obviously very limited, right? Because yeah, we can't postpone an audit 2 weeks, obviously. So we haven't seen cases where something urgent came and we had to do a 3 weeks audit urgently. In general, things like that, we can review a fix. It takes less than 2 days normally to review a fix for something specific like that. So we haven't seen the case, but I think then we would assign another auditor, because we have auditors who kind of work more on the quality assurance, and our CTO, who's also an auditor who does an audit. So we always have some buffer space where we could assign another auditor. So maybe we can't guarantee it's going to be your retainer auditor who knows your project by heart, but someone is going to look at it for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the same for us. It's not easy. Changes come in and we need to help our customers, and this is also related to day-to-day life. Yeah, we just get help from other projects that are maybe going a little bit faster. Sometimes we can call in even our development team to help in, and yeah, it's a daily challenge to keep up to the demand and to the needs, and we try to do it the best way, but not easy. Yeah.
So do you feel that the protocol side sort of underestimates the effort involved? I mean, I have seen this personally, right? Where somebody comes back, I forget who I was chatting with, but with fixes, right? So there was an audit, there is a review, and there are a whole bunch of findings, and the team obviously spends their time, right? Maybe changing the protocol design, putting in all the fixes, and these are not like unit fixes, right? You touch this here, great. You touch this here, but you touch this, so this broke, right? And it comes back onto your plate, right? After, I don't know, 6 weeks, 6 months, right? And maybe it's me, but the cache in my head is flushed, right? I have no context because I'm going from, I'm not on a retainer, let's assume, right? I'm going from this protocol, so maybe take some time off to the other protocol. But that is a challenge. I mean, I'm sure your teams associate or relate to that challenge, but is that something that from a protocol side that...
Yeah. I mean, the way I think about this from the protocol side is that like the protocol does have a responsibility to respond promptly, and if the protocol is responding 6 months later or something, they should have an expectation that maybe it's going to take longer and maybe there will be some extra charges, and I think that's completely reasonable. I mean, I've certainly been on that side of things from the audit perspective, of like clients that are like, okay, it's been 6 months, we finally fixed it, can you look at it? And there had to be some negotiation there, and from the perspective of like the relationship around hacks or critical issues, we don't build it into our response process that we assume we can get a hold of our auditors, right? Like, if we can, great. But if not, we have an internal team, and we're ultimately responsible for our protocol, and we need to be ready to respond to security incidents, even in isolation if necessary. And so, I think protocols shouldn't become over-reliant on auditors as sort of this external appendage that you just delegate everything to, because ultimately, I think the protocol is responsible, for the safety of its code, and auditors is just like one small piece of the holistic engineering process.
I have a feeling Morpho may have a different opinion.
Not really. I just wanted to talk about time constraints. So for normal audit, so it's less the case right now because we are on the bear market. But at the beginning of building of a protocol, you need to schedule audit, and sometimes it's like 6 months or 9 months in the future, and you don't even have a product. So you have a couple of lines of code, and that's okay, that's fine. But you need to build the entire thing, and you have a time constraint, and you need to build everything within this time constraint. It's the same for retainer, but with shorter time constraint, and you already have your product, but there's a stress on the protocol side that everything should be okay at that date, because we know, I feel that we know and understand that we cannot really postpone an audit, because audit companies are a bit overwhelmed, and so there are no room for changes. And I think it's really not difficult, but it had lots of stress on developers and technical teams. And I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. So we're just going maybe a bit ahead.
Okay,
but
sorry.
No, this is good. I think it's a good flow. So do you, from a protocol side, right? I think the other two have a security perspective, but again, feel free to answer. What would a good solution be to that, right? But because from the auditor's side, they have a pipeline, right? They already have a buffer from what I can tell, right? But in terms of having a bigger or better buffer from a time management perspective, I think Diligence is trying something different in that space with the turn tokens. I don't know if you saw that, right?
Yeah,
do you have what
I
the
don't
best case
have
scenario for you?
I don't really have any solution. I would say perhaps a calendar with your availabilities. We would not know what are the other protocols that are applying for audits, but at least we know when we could schedule audits, and perhaps it would be easier to manage roadmaps for protocols. I don't know. I think I should just reflect deeper on that topic, but there might be solution to both teams, protocol side and audit side.
Yeah, I think, I struggle this at Polygon a little bit, but it's the fact of, engineering teams need to become a little bit more organized as well, no? From security engineering teams, but also development teams, QA teams. I notice this a lot in the Web2 world. We have this whole, sprints, and all the sprints are scheduled and done on time. And if you don't get your feature into the sprint, the feature is gone. While in smart contract development in general, I see that we're lacking a little bit of this formality, a little bit of this organization. So if we can actually, and I'm not saying that it's great what normal development or SDLC normally looks like. I think there's a lot of room for improvement, but we definitely need to adopt some of these best practices, and that will help you 100% on scheduling your audits, because I know that sprint 35 finishes on the 1st of December. It will include these 7 features, and I can go to any of my auditors and tell them, okay, 10 of December, we're going to have this done. All of these features will be included, and the audit is done. But unfortunately, that's not always what happens. And, I end up in the call with, any of our auditors, and they're like, so is the code complete? Yeah. So you got unit tests? No. And documentation, no. And then I feel bad, obviously, as a security person, because I know that, it's a waste of time also for you guys. You're auditing a contract and then have no documentation, no unit tests, no basic testing into the protocol. I'm paying thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars for your time. And in the end, what you're doing is, just looking at stupid bugs. Well, I prefer you to really spend the time on doing, that line by line code and looking at, the dynamics of the protocols or the supply chain, or, how it relates to other environments.
Yeah, this is something that I think just is universal in software, which is highly subject to Hofstadter's law, which is that everything takes longer than you expect, even when you apply Hofstadter's law. Right, like even if you have a highly organized process, maybe like in the middle of your development, a bug is discovered in like the active protocol parts you've already deployed, and you have to randomize yourself for a month to address that issue. And now you're going to be going into the audit with not having things as done as you'd like. And so you can have like fallback plans of like, how can we rescope the audit, or how can we at least prioritize the things we want to have as complete as possible going into that. And with better planning, you minimize it, but I don't think you ever completely eliminate it.
Maybe this is a good time to sort of bring in the topic of alternative venues, right? So I think we're talking about, maybe you have retainers and maybe you have preferred vendors, and this touches upon the quality question that came up earlier, right? But there are also a couple of, not so recent forums such as Code Arena, right? Sherlock recently, right? Which have launched this concept of community-based audit contests, right? And I believe one of the things that they advertise is you can schedule an audit contest, whatever you want to call it, right? Bug bounty contest, audit contest with that platform, where you don't have, a specific set of engineers from any of your preferred auditing companies, but you have this community of freelancers. People are doing it on nights and weekends, right? So is that, from a protocol perspective, I mean, I see that becoming more common than what it was about a year earlier. So do you see that as an option?
Yeah, we haven't actually used it at Maker yet, but I think it is good. Like there was a Sherlock talk at the DeFi Security Summit a couple months ago where they did like a retrospective on all the Code Arena audits, and they found that they're actually like quite good. They pretty much find most of the bugs, and when hacks happen, it was either a bug that was reported and not fixed, or it was something that was out of scope, right? So they are like a good, they're empirically a good like security practice, and I think we'll see them used more going forwards. At the same time, you might want your like specialty auditor who has expertise in some particular tool or method or knows your code well. I think Sherlock is actually pioneering a model where they do a little bit of both. But so yeah, I think that's a good like another tool in the toolbox. Nothing's a silver bullet, but seems like those are a good thing.
So from the auditor side, do you see them as sort of competition, or?
I think, like our personal opinion, I think crowd security is doing great work, but the things that have like money-oriented or financial motivation, like because the guys they're trying just to report as much stuff as they can find, so they can get a bounty or whatever, that might consume like your team time, because they will try to triage these bugs, but they might not be valid bugs, or they are also reporting like useless stuff maybe. So yeah, the crowd security has like its own good sides and also its own dark side, in my opinion, because it's same applies also to web to space. So yeah, it could be an option, but I prefer like working with a vendor that has a proper time management and resource management and really well predefined ROE is much better than working with a crowdsourced.
Okay. Just to note, I mean, these crowdsourced efforts do have judging, right? I mean, this is not Immunify, right?
Yeah, they have. I mean, at the end, you are getting a final report, but I am checking for example, like there's a lot of vulnerabilities that are unfixed because developers didn't accept those vulnerabilities. Okay, but they bait for some vulnerabilities from the pool or whatever. So
Okay.
it's kind of like waste of time, in my opinion.
Okay.
I think.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we can have the best of both worlds. I was talking about this subject with Emilie a few minutes ago, earlier, and it's perhaps like do the two types of audits, like one with Sherlock or Code Arena, and one with chain security or whatever. And then you have perhaps a good filters about the bugs that could be in your smart contracts, so that you have like that report with like security expert, etc. But also like this human further, where you have like plenty of really hungry people that want to have money and rewards, and I think it's we didn't try it yet at Morpho, but I think it would be the if we're going to a next audit, I think we'll do the like Color Arena, and then after an audit, or the other way around. I think also we should mention the formal proving, which I think we should work to just lower the barrier at the entry. So fortunately at Morpho, we have a formal prover, so we can do it internally, and we are closely working with Sartora. But we are really lucky to have this person on board. But I think for other projects, it's super complex, and it's really important to have that too, because it's ensure that your protocol is working as intended. And for now, I think it's too complex for like small projects that are starting, and we definitely should work on that.
So I can add to that actually crowd and formal goes very good together. So we already have community members that do formal verification, and they get grants. We do have the same problem that right, the incentive is to write specification, and then we have a lot of noise in reviewing it. So we all need to build technology to help us review and assess the quality. But crowd goes, I think, very well. I mean, the more eyes you have and the more people coming with different ideas is very good for security.
Yeah, one thing I think it's indeed quite complementary. So yeah, we were discussing if it makes more sense to have an audit contest before or after an audit with an audit company. I was discussing it more with clients to do it before, because it's kind of good if a client comes with code that is kind of cleaned up and the kind of easy to spot vulnerabilities are not there. So then the auditors can really focus on I think what make us good. So thinking about the whole system holistically, thinking about the interactions, thinking about all of these more complex topics, which I think maybe in an audit contest you might not. It might not make sense, right, to look after that, because it takes a long time to think about it, and there's a high chance there's not going to be something, right? So yeah, it's kind of the opposite of the quick gains. So I think it makes sense that the auditors can focus on that. And then when you do an audit contest, it's also, you're not sure who's going to participate in it. Like, did you have the best and the brightest, or was it the week where, the two best are on holidays and they haven't looked at it? So it's kind of also this irregular performance, and you don't know if they've looked at the whole code base. So then the auditors bring you that, because you have that contract that says we have to look at everything. So yeah, I think that's why it mixes well.
Yeah, I mean, great perspective. So just a time check. So we have about 10 minutes left. Well, 11 minutes left. So I think the people who asked the questions are maybe not in the room, but those were excellent questions. One was about the quality of audits, right? Quality of audits. Well, Morpho looks like you've been experimenting with multiple audit partners, right? What do you feel? What's your perception of the general level of...
Everything is bad.
Everything is bad?
Yeah.
All right.
No, joking. Yeah,
But does it say anything about your code? or documentation?
Yeah. No. The one we work with were like the top tier companies. So in general, even the I think Spirit has another way of working with protocols than Trail of Bits and Change Security. It's quite different in the way they work, but the quality of audits were really good. I hope that...
You're talking about Spearbit?
No. Like the one we work with were pretty good. We have our own ranking, but I will not speak about that because I just want to to be able to leave after. But yeah, I just wanted to say that I think the bigger deal is that it's super expensive, and sometimes you like for a small project or something like that, you cannot afford to pay tens of thousands or even hundred of thousands just for an audit. And sometimes you need like 2 audits to ensure that everything is safe, and it's super expensive, so you need to fundraise, etc. And if you don't have this money, you will turn to like medium or low tier audit companies, and yeah, that's a real life right now, and it's kind of difficult for a starting project to have a good security expert doing audits.
Yeah, the notion of like what qualifies an audit firm as, you know, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, like that gets thrown around a lot, but it's not rigorously defined, and, you know, audit firms can shift in between those levels, right? Like imagine you have an audit firm, they have some really killer auditors, they get a tier 1 reputation, and then all those killer auditors leave to go do some like more lucrative thing, and they hire a bunch of like maybe still good but not as good as the ones who left, and they still for a time have this like tier 1 reputation, and then maybe it goes down over time, and then maybe there's another audit firm that, you know, climbs, you know, gets somebody really good, but it takes a while for the market to figure out. So it's very opaque. It very much depends, even with the high level firms, like who you actually get from them, or even the same person on like a different week, depending on what's going on in their life, can be a very different auditor. So there's a lot of like word of mouth, honestly. Like the protocols are kind of talking behind the scenes, like, hey, who have you had good experiences with? And you're all, it's one of these just like constant arms races of like, how do you get the best information, without like spoiling your relationships or anything, right? Because if like I went out and published like, oh, here was my auditor tier list on Twitter, that might affect my ability to work with various audit firms in the future. So I'm not going to do that, and don't ask me here because I'm not going to tell you. But it's a lot of back channels, just trying to figure it out however you can get information.
How does it work on the? Oh, sorry. Yep.
Yeah, no, I think that's going to change, to be honest. That over time, processes are going to be created, methodologies are going to be created, standards are going to be created for auditing, for code reviewing, for pen testing. That already exists to a certain degree, like for just Web 2 type of audits and stuff like that. And we're going to rely less on, oh, I'm being audited by this guy, or I got this guy on the team who works for the Ethereum Foundation or something like that, and more on the methodology that they're using and the standard they're using. So I think one of the things that I, personally am looking for in this world, in this new Web3 type of ecosystem, is building standards. It's building the new certification methodologies. It's building the new, processes in order to basically assess. So then when you actually get an audit, it doesn't depend on if the auditor had a good day or had a bad day, or if Barcelona won or Barcelona lost, or who won the World Cup. But actually, that he's following a set of well-defined processes, a set of a checklist to a certain degree that assures you that, at least the basic things are covered. Now, for very specific stuff, like, Polygon is getting a lot into, the CK world and these, very, very, very complicated cryptography type of problems, you're definitely going to want to have those 2 or 3 guys in the world that basically understand what they're talking about. Now, but for everybody else, for just the general protocols and, even for Polygon, most of the products, what I want to find is somebody that is following methodology, that is following standards, that I can be assured that the basic things are covered.
What does the auditor side think? I mean,
So I think
but let me make it more specific. Do you guys think you're in the tier one?
yes.
We need to wake people up.
Yeah, I think so. So, I mean, again, this is a metric that is obviously advantageous for us. But I think if you look at kind of the contracts we've audited, when we've audited them, how many millions or billions are locked in those contracts, and have those contracts been exploited? And I think that's a pretty good metric to see. Basically, again, it's kind of this rec leaderboard metric, which I think is kind of good. The problem is that, of course, all audits are not going to be published. So that's also the thing. Maybe there is, again, 10 audits on the website that, oh, it's perfect, haven't been hacked, and then 100 that have been hacked and you don't know it. So that's
Transparency, yeah.
Yeah, that's also the thing. But yeah, I think for us, why I would say we're a tier one is, I mean, we do have a lot of clients like Maker. Now we just finished an audit for Uniswap. We worked with Aave, we worked with Compound, with Curve, with Urine. I mean, we have and Morpho, obviously.
Thank you.
And I think if you look at all those contracts and how long they've stayed safe until now, so I think this this kind of helps us identify. But then again, like you said, so we have these auditors. Maybe one is going to have a bad day. Maybe, I mean, there is still always a human factor. And even if you have methodologies, there's always a human factor. So maybe this is where Certora comes in.
Where tools come in, and not necessarily Certora, right? So, in the Web 2 world, you see a lot more tools, right? There is a whole layer for everything. And even, it's much harder to exploit if there is a vulnerability. And these are things that are missing in the Web 3. So more tools should definitely come in.
So I think, okay, so I think since Web3 is new ecosystem, as you just mentioned, I'm against creating a standard, at least for the moment. Yeah, maybe we can create a standard for auditing the stuff, but it should cover the basics. But as a human, just the basic humans, the auditors will just go and rely on these basics or these standards, and they'll just apply them and apply this methodology. But I'm quite sure that it's not enough to guarantee you a security for your whatever you're trying to do, because I mean, what hackers do, they are trying to go out of the standard always. So that's basically what they're trying to do. So on the other hand, also how you can classifying the auditors or the vendors is, okay, how many of their clients got hacked, right? So it's more to be like how many of their clients got hacked, but maybe there's some clients of them okay, these people are writing really awful code, and as she mentioned, they're not published, the reports are not published because there's some protocols asking, please, we don't want to publish this report, and they're coming after a few months, says, okay, can you audit us again? And we already remediated all the critical vulnerabilities, all the stuff we found. So I think there's no standard about how you can classify vendors in terms of auditing, which one is better, which one is best, because it's changing over the time. For sure.
Yeah, I guess even if a protocol was audited by a particular auditor and then it got hacked, you've got to check, well, maybe the auditor reported that bug and they didn't fix it, or maybe they changed the code after the auditor looked at it. So it's still not even obvious then. I agree that standards are going to be very challenging because sort of by definition, every new protocol is doing something bespoke, and I see the worst problems usually arise actually in the particular business logics, and you can't really write a standard that covers basically, every program that could be written and say, this is what you should check for. You can definitely have standards and they will make things better, but I think they'll be far from a silver bullet. And I want to build a little on what Nurit was saying about tools and formal verifications helping out with this, and in particular, how you should think about formal verification in relation to audits, which is that you want to start doing your formal verification early, and particularly want to try to think of the properties you want to prove early on, preferably before you even write code. This will do a few things. Number one, even if you don't actually do formal verification, at least thinking of the properties will help guide you, and then it becomes a documentation you can pass to your auditor. So it would be great if audit reports came with like, hey, here were the properties the team gave us that we could check, and maybe here are some others we came up with. And I think that's a promising avenue for improvement.
Yeah. So I think we're almost running. Well, we ran out of time, so we'll pause for one question from the audience, if any. Okay, we have two, so you get 1 second each.
Was it the countdown until the end of the panel or until the beginning of the Q&A? Like, was it 45 minutes or 1 hour?
I didn't check.
4 o'clock.
Let's go.
All right, so I have a very simple yet spicy question for both of you. So, to the protocol team, could you share with us your worst experience with auditors? And what else could you share as an insight so they could get better? And the same for you, like what has been your worst experience with a client and what could the client do better?
I would go with that, like, what's the worst thing client can give? Like, he just mentioned it earlier, like, a client, we are not ready yet, but we need to, like, to stick to the timeline, and here is the code, we don't have documentation, we don't have unit tests. So, yeah, that's actually one of the most worst experience you can have during an audit. Because, I mean, contract is signed, you got the timelines, you have to execute. That might affect your quality of work. It also depends on the team experience and the engineers you got. But mostly it's annoying for engineers at the end of the day.
So no, because it's the same, and I think it's annoying for the auditors, of course, because you can't do good work, but also it's very annoying for the projects who submit, because I think sometimes people think the audit is a silver bullet, like I give horrible code and then it's gonna be all nice. But the problem is that if you do that, probably you're gonna have to rewrite most of the code, rebook an audit, and everybody's kind of sad about it. And so I think, yeah, for sure, good documentation, proper testing, being ready for your audits. Yeah.
Yeah. On the protocol side, I would say that perhaps the worst thing is you do an audit, everything seems fine, and you still review it, etc. internally, and you find some bugs, and this is
as in the protocol side.
Yeah, on the protocol
after the
side,
audit is done.
it's not deployed.
It's not deployed. Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of annoying because then you just say to yourself, okay, then if there are some bugs, perhaps they are over like critical bugs, and then you need to redo an audit, and that's kind of annoying because you need to postpone everything or find a new auditor, or etc. And yeah, it's lots of time and money.
But by the way, quick thing, like if you during reviews if you found like they found a critical vulnerability, that's a really big flag for a vendor, and you should go ahead and change it. Because I mean, if these people missed a critical vulnerability, means they assign like maybe a junior engineer to do your contract, and I mean, but you have to pay more money, so they won't assign juniors.
Yeah, as I said, we are trying like every auditors in the place to.
Probably a Slitter report copy paste. So that's probably the worst thing I've seen from an auditor.
Yeah. On the critical vulnerability missed, I mean, if they found 5 crits and missed 1, that's different from like missing 1. But yeah, well, things that we've experienced that were very annoying is like under communication. So like it's a 2-week audit, and then like 2 days before it's finished, then they finally send you their first like, oh yeah, here are the issues we found so far. Like, we want auditors to sort of contact us. It doesn't have to be right away, but at least by at least halfway through the audit, it would be nice to hear things so we can give feedback on what they're looking at, tell them whether those are actually bugs. Maybe we can even start fixing them before the audit's over. Another annoying thing is when auditors don't focus on like the things we're more concerned about, and maybe focus on like more trivial stuff like, governance could file like this parameter as like 0 or something, and we're like, yeah, okay, but that's not in the security model here, we're not worried about that for this other reason, so please focus on other things. And then they just keep finding stuff like that, then that can be annoying too.
I feel this can go on for a while, but let's go to the question from Gustavo. Here, last row, please.
So yeah, I think the question I was going to do was mostly answered, and it was related with an auditor finding, let's say, a number of criticals during a week, and then the audit finishes, and then the protocol internally do another audit and found another critical issue. So the client comes back says, well, what is going on? So what is your view on this in terms of should the auditor give more time, or it's like in the report we usually the audit has a time bound, and the result, the conclusion is this code needs another review. So that's another important part. So what is your view on this?
Yeah, I think that's all communication. No, and I've seen that in the past where auditors have come and like, we cannot finish the audit because we still haven't been able to review the whole code. Again, you can blame like bad scoping or things like that, but in the end, it's all about communication. And if the auditor is not able to fully review that function, fully review that module, then that needs to be properly communicated and either ask for an extension or just communicate, hey, we're not going to be able to finish reviewing that. I don't want you to come back and say like, yeah, we reviewed it, but you only did half the job. I think that's when you say like, goodbye, auditor. Just honesty and communication.
Well, we are out of time, but given that this is one last question after this, but there's a buffer. So yeah, we'll wait for the buffer. But given that the emphasis is on partnership and relationship, let's end it on a positive note. What's one thing that you like about what the auditors do? And what's one thing that you like that the protocols have been, well, all your companies have been around for more than a year or several years now, right? You would have seen a change in the maturity of the protocols and documentation and communication scoping. I'm sure something is, hopefully we are getting better, right? If not worse.
Yeah, I mean, I think the back and forths have gotten a lot better over time, and they're now really good. Like, because our code is not necessarily easy to understand, and the auditors aren't afraid to come to us and admit like, hey, what are you guys trying to do here? And they're okay with admitting like, yeah, maybe it's confusing, and maybe it's confusing because we've done something wrong. Or
you mean with the function names?
Yeah. Oh, that's another hour. So let's not get into that.
Sorry, couldn't resist.
Well, yeah, we can fight about it later. That and yeah, also just like what Emilie was mentioning earlier of like if they find a bug in something else, checking other things and notifying you if you're affected by that. We had one case of that in Maker, and so that was really awesome.
I think for me is education and tooling. I think I really like seeing a lot of the auditors that now have experience being able to teach the young ones. Like it's no secret that in just the general cybersecurity world, there is a huge lack of talent. Like this is not directed to Web3 or Web2, is just generalized. And I love to see a lot of the auditors starting to do a lot of, especially in Web3, like free training, free bootcamps, free become an auditor, become a security guy. And the same with tooling. You've touched about it. There's no tooling, like nothing at all. And I'm happy to see a lot of the auditors building that tooling, and especially if it's open source and you're not going to charge me for it.
Yeah, I think there's this expertise that perhaps you don't have internally, and with auditors you can have that, and it's super helpful on like really specific topics, and it overall it increases the security because you also inherit like code pattern or like different point of view of how do you should code your smart contracts, and which is really helpful for the development of your protocol. And also there's the flexibility. So we talk about time constraints, etc. But I truly think that auditors try their best to help to ease the audit process, and I think we should acknowledge that too.
All right. Let's see if the auditors have
So I really like that we see protocols thinking about properties, either writing them in plain English, but also using tools. So, Maker, Morpho, we have quite a lot of protocols using our technology and also other technologies. It's, that's a great progress, I think.
Anything good? No, I mean, do you have anything good?
Yeah, the money. Okay. Other than that, I'm joking, but it's actually the opposite of the worst thing we can have from a project, which is like well documentation, crystal clear white paper, architecture diagrams and all this stuff. They're actually providing more security to the protocol itself, because once we understand what we are having right here, it's giving us like visibility, our view or whatever, that's allowing us to, focus on the hotspots within the project. And this is what I like about the protocol side or customer side. When they're doing that in the right way, it's kind of hot.
And for that joke, Halbon is going to give a free audit to the first 3 protocols that talk to Hossam.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I was gonna say kind of the same thing, not the money, but the good documentation. But maybe now that the market has shifted a bit, I think the projects that we still see who are kind of alive, thriving, are really interesting projects who really want to innovate, who really want to have a good part in the ecosystem, and that I'm kind of looking forward to.
Have the money. Yeah. Cool. I think given that we're all happy, we've shared happy things, it's probably good to end on a positive note. Unless we are getting kicked off, there may be one more question which can happen after.
Very quick one, maybe fun one. So OpenAI has a playground, and I was inputting and I was asking the OpenAI, like, hey, can you find this bug in this smart contract? And it would literally tell me, like, hey, this is the bug and this is how you can fix it. So my question is, how long until we get replaced by AI?
How do you know we are not already replaced, as in the auditor side?
Why regular cybersecurity is not replaced by AI till now? Why humans are not replaced by AIs right till now? Yeah, it's a matter of time. But why till now? Because we didn't reach that technology yet. You didn't simulate a real human who can. You need to create a hacker robot, and it's gonna take a lot of time, in my opinion. Really, really. I hope we can live till that time. I don't think so.
So I think it can help, right? I mean, it can detect common patterns that are repeated, but it's not instead of tooling, not instead of auditing. So use it. If it worked, go ahead.
All right. Well, please give a hand to all the panelists, and thank you all.